Hello and welcome. You're listening to Start Again with Shaunna Lee, the place where you will be reminded that it's never too late and you're never too old to do the damn thing. So stick around if you're ready to vibe higher and be inspired to chase your dreams. Together, we will uncover your soul's truest desires. Now, if you're ready, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, I am going to introduce you to Rachelle Kaler, and she is a relationship coach. I am summarizing. I will give her the opportunity to correctly introduce herself, but I am so thrilled that we are going to get to dive into some really fun topics today. Hopefully, human design is one of them. But Rachelle, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Shaunna.
Absolutely. I am so excited for us to dive into all these fun topics. The way I love to kick this off is for you to just do a quick little intro to my audience, tell them who you are and where you're coming from. But specifically, how have you embraced this idea of starting again?
Well, I would say starting again is very applicable to my life in general. There's been a handful of times where I have started over again. I do come from a background in therapy and counseling, and I started again recently by switching over to becoming a holistic relationship coach. And why I say
Yes.
holistic is I truly believe that we are in relationship to and with everything around us. And a lot of the women that I work with specifically are very growth oriented, highly successful, and resilient, but not always by choice. They've
Yes.
usually had some sort of adversity that happened in their lives that got them to where they are today. But now some of those survival strategies are just not serving them to get them to where they fully want to go. So they have this desire to expand and grow, but they do a lot on their own. And this is where
Mhm.
I come in because I needed a teammate so many times in my life. And so I provide that for all of my clients. I'm in their back corner, cheering them on and supporting them and their nervous systems find alignment through things like human design, masculine and feminine energy, nervous system support, inner child work, and honestly, tons of different somatic, spiritual, and therapeutic strategies. So it's really about helping the women I work with find and experience multidimensional love and ease and joy in ultimately every aspect of their life because we all deserve that. And I think it's all those like little bits and pieces along the way that can kind of stop us from getting to that next level. And so I really love kind of helping people break those cycles, break those patterns,
Yep.
and expand. And so for me, I went from, again, to answer your question about starting over. So, in the midst of a divorce, which was starting over,
Yep.
I decided to go back to school for training in therapy and coaching. And that was a big reset because originally my previous start over was in fashion. So, very different world, yet
Yes.
not so different when I realized what I liked about fashion was ultimately helping people see something about themselves they never seen before.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
realize that that was kind of my, sneaky way of going into the therapy and coaching world. So when I started in my journey as a private practice therapist, I really enjoyed it, but there was something missing and there was an aspect of the limitations to the care that I could provide my clients. And as much as I really value a lot of the ethical components I learned, sometimes those were also blocks in supporting my clients. So a lot of what I do is Telegram and text and voice memo
Yep.
support in between sessions. And I wasn't really allowed to do a lot of those things. I'm not allowed to like follow my clients on social media. I wasn't allowed to like have sort of a certain level of relationship built.
Yep. Yep.
So those kind of felt like blocks to care because I never really felt like I was the type of therapist that needed to sit there in silence and give someone a book at the end. I was always very solution oriented and goal oriented. So it just felt like a natural progression. Like once I really owned that I wanted to do coaching, and that I already kind of had been doing it, it's just
Yeah.
shifted now. Um, the type of women that I enjoy working with and the type of support I can provide for them.
Well, I really appreciate that because you've answered one of the questions I get a lot, which is what's the difference between a therapist and a coach? And
Aha,
so
yes.
you definitely addressed that, which is helpful. Well, so that definitely takes us through how you identify as a start again queen.
Love
Because
that.
yes, yes. You know, a lot of the work I do is in empowering women to take their power back, and I
Mhm.
like throwing the word queen around because it makes them a little bit squirmy
Me too.
until they own it. So that's awesome. I really love that. So tell us a little bit about your business. You've walked us through what inspired you to start it, but maybe talk a little bit more about these transitions, these transformations that you see with your clients. Because what I heard you say is you're ultimately taking them out of this survival mode way of existing into truly thriving, which I'm very
Mhm.
familiar with, but I would love to have you dive into that a little bit more.
So, here's what I'll say to that. Every single thing I do is client driven. So there are general themes that come across my table most of the time, but I never treat anyone like they need to fit into a methodology or a step by step strategy, which some coaches do, and that works
Yep.
for them, but that's
Yep.
not the way I work. I look at the unique individual because everyone has these little nuances to why they're more avoidantly attached, why, when they're triggered, they default to hiding in their room by themselves, why they want to project back onto their partner when it's really them that they're anxious about and something internal. So I do my best to shine light on the magic that I already know is there. And they usually just need someone to offer them perspective shifts
Yeah.
through also regulating and honoring their nervous system when they are going to those next levels. Because I see so many people out there talk about survival strategies as toxic
Hmm.
or trauma and use these languages like bad or wrong
Yep.
or you need fixing. And I'm like, but that's got you to where you are and
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
successful already.
It
Like,
worked
let's not
really
shame.
well. Right. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's not shame those parts, but let's like work with those parts, right? So oftentimes for my clients, I can be the first person that they actually like process with in real time instead
Yep.
of like filling in the gaps on their own,
Yep.
making assumptions about a situation, and then like going to their partner or their friend with the like, oh, I already figured out the solution. And the partner's like, what are you talking about? I did not mean that when I said that.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
oftentimes that's the support I provide is stepping in there.
And I think that real time support is really helpful because a lot of the work I do with clients is after the divorce has happened, right? So we do this relationship
Hmm.
assessment, which is valuable, but being able to really kind of attack the problem in the moment and recognize those patterns while you're in the
Hmm.
relationship is pretty valuable. One of the ways that you have mentioned is that you work with your clients is around human design,
Yes.
which I am fascinated with. And I've not spent a ton of time on this show talking about it, but I would love to. We don't need to give everyone like the human design 101 because there's Google. But maybe specifically let's highlight some of the ways that human design can help people with that transition from
Yes.
survival mode, what's no longer serving them, into kind of finding new ways of existing in the world.
Hmm. So two ways that you can figure out human design with me. First and foremost, you can do it in my coaching packages because I it's now a shared language that we would have and it helps my clients find alignment. The other
Yep.
way that we can do it is just doing an individual reading or a human design integration package. But human design for me was such a game changer in helping me understand myself. I did not realize that I was making so many decisions from my head when I was supposed to be making it through my body. And that's the
Yeah.
premise for every single human design type. So there are 5 types. We all have one of them. And then there are
Yep.
profiles, and then authority, and then definition. And then we go into, again, what centers are defined, undefined. What I love so much about human design is I have yet to meet someone who hasn't told me, like, oh my gosh, this feels like who I am, and I just needed a permission slip to be that person.
Yes.
It's so accurate, and it talks so much about how we can connect and bond and why we like certain people and why we don't like certain people, why certain people do things a certain way and why you do things a certain way. And it takes away the judgment from it once you understand where it comes from and why it's there. And to me, I see human design as like almost like a soul blueprint. Like
Yeah.
it's just like your map to yourself and your map to understanding who you are and yourself. So, Shaunna, I'd love to pick your brain and ask you about your type and also your authority. And maybe also like understand how much you've heard or studied human design, if any.
Yeah, I'm a studied on my own is what I'm going to say. I
Yeah.
have I done a reading before? Maybe I've done lots of readings, so probably, but I haven't ever like taken a formal class or course or anything like that. I've just, Google is my best friend, and I just find a
Mhm.
few sites that I follow a few human design experts and, consume the information this way. I will say human design is similar to astrology in that it is very complex. And
Yeah.
like I could spend hours going down a rabbit hole of any one aspect of human design, which I have done.
Mhm.
So I am a manifesting generator.
Mhm.
I have the emotional authority,
Mhm.
which has taken me my whole life to understand this about myself, which we can
Ah,
talk about.
yeah.
I
Yes.
am a split definition.
Mhm.
Let me think what else.
Do you remember your profile lines?
Okay. So, yes, I can tell you my profile is 5-1, the solver, the challenge solver.
Mhm. Mhm.
My strategy is responding,
Yep.
and oh, my incarnation cross, which maybe you can talk to that a little bit too, is the left angle cross of education.
Oh, cool. Well, that makes
So
sense why you're
that
doing
is,
a podcast.
uh-huh. Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah. So maybe I'll touch on I love meeting emotional authorities. Uh
Yes.
I have my solar plexus completely wide open, which means that I am highly empathic, but I never knew that I was. I physically feel the sensations of people's emotions around me. And I grew up in a home with my dad and brother being emotional authorities. It was a lot. I used to run and hide in my room a lot to get away from it
Yeah.
because I didn't know what was happening and I didn't know a lot about my sensitivities because growing up, I was not perceived as the sensitive one. My brother was,
Right.
which is quite fascinating. And it's not to say that emotional authorities aren't sensitive, they are too. It just shows up differently,
Yeah.
right? So, why I attract a lot of emotional authority clients is we're beautiful mirrors for each other. A lot of the times, I see that emotional authority clients really need to have a permission slip to take their time,
Yes.
to feel through a wave, and to realize they're not too much
Yep.
because a lot of projection comes onto emotional authorities. And if we think about this, like 50% of the population can be an emotional authority. So, with 50% of the world out there operating through emotions, right? This world is not made for emotional authorities yet. 50% of the population is an emotional authority.
Yeah.
And so many of my clients get really scared about their emotional wave. A lot of times they feel like they're either in a major depressive disorder or a heightened anxiety, and they don't know that that is actually what their quote unquote wave feels like.
Hmm.
So when they meet me, okay, with a completely open solar plexus, I can amplify those feelings even more. But the beauty is that I don't take it on as mine or judge them for it because they're my clients.
Right.
Now, in intimate relationships, however, this has been a massive lesson for me
It's a little
because
tricky.
my partner is also an emotional authority. And so here's a beautiful example of how it plays out. So, oftentimes, emotional authorities don't always have the words for how they feel. They just feel what they feel. So it's just there. My partner can wake up in a wave or see something that upset him. And I'll be like, hey, are you feeling sad about that? And he'll be like, no, I'm fine. And I'll be like, are you sure? And then within 5 minutes, something shifts and he's like, actually, yeah, I was noticing I was feeling upset about blah, blah, blah. Or we'll be in and watching a movie and something will come up and I'll emote more than him, even though he's the one that's feeling
Yes.
the emotion of what we're watching.
Uh-huh.
And it's almost like I'm just allowing the presence of the feeling that he's feeling to just flow through me. So my journey as a non-emotional has been, do not fix someone in their emotional wave. Even though I'm uncomfortable with how I feel right now,
Yeah.
it's not my responsibility to fix it or change it. That does not serve a purpose for either one of us.
Right.
And when I try to do that and have tried to do that in the past, it amplifies things and we start fighting because I'm feeling their angst like 10,000
Yes.
times bigger than
Yeah.
they are. And then it goes bigger, 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 bigger.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
both of us feel like crap because it's just not working. So I witness my partner in his wave. I've learned what helps soothe him. Oftentimes, a mix of space is super helpful, mixed with like a hug
Yeah.
and just empathy.
Yeah.
And then when he's done the wave, I'm like, okay, and how was that for me? I'm going to share with you how that impacted
Yes.
me now afterwards.
Yes. No, I've had people tell me that I'm too much my whole life. Yes, for sure.
Mm,
But I think I have learned for myself, I had never heard until studying human design it described as a wave, as this emotional wave. And I never considered
yeah.
myself very emotional as a person. In fact, I've spent the better part of my adult life learning to feel my emotions because I had, shut that down.
Mhm.
That was my
Mhm.
survival mode for sure for the early part of my
Mhm.
life. So allowing myself to feel the feelings was the first step. And then realizing that there is a wave to
Yeah.
them. What I've learned is that when I'm in a heightened emotional space, that I just allow room for those emotions to be there, whatever they are, and
Yeah.
not to make decisions there. And so
Yes.
I just allow it to do what it's going to do, feel the feelings. And then when I feel kind of centered and back to quote unquote normal, back to my kind of centered neutral place, then I can process and make decisions and kind of follow the thoughts that were
Mhm.
in that emotional wave because there's usually
Yeah.
lots of thoughts there because I'm a Manny Gen as well. So the thoughts are
Mhm.
always going, the ideas, the creativity, all the things. That's my favorite phrase, all the things, because that's really describing my mind and how it works.
Yes. Mhm. Do you know off the top of your head if you have those top 2 centers open or defined?
The Anja and what's the next one down are both open
The
for,
head and the ajna, yeah.
those are both open for me
Okay, so that explains you're getting constant downloads all the time. It's like
uh-huh.
like noise all the
All
time.
the time.
Whereas someone who, like me, I have those both defined, and so I have a constant voice, but it's an internal, like, set dialogue where sometimes I get in a loop and I can't get out of the loop like an earworm.
Hmm.
Whereas, like, I know people, and I don't know if this is true for you, but with those undefined, it's almost like they can turn their brain off sometimes, and or they can just sit in meditation and like allow the inspiration to come in. Like it's almost like blips. You're hearing a lot of sound and noise around you and maybe thoughts and ideas around you, and the question is oftentimes like, is this mine? Is this belief mine? Did I come up with that idea? I don't know where I stand on that thing, but and then the Manny Jen in you is probably going to go, okay, that's uncomfortable. Was that mine? I need to feel my feelings. And then I need to go, okay, yes or no, am I going to pursue this idea or not?
Yeah.
Whereas like for me as sacral generator, my journey with having those defined is I need to like be in my body rather than in my head because my head is loud.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, so I would say meditation for me, has been a practice to learn how to turn it off, but not completely.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
the creative inspiration, the ideas, the book ideas, that is where that comes from. And so that's one of the things I talk about when I'm talking about meditation. My goal is never to turn off my thoughts completely, because that's where I'm getting my ideas, which are never really
Mhm.
just from me. I realize it's my meditation is being able to tap into the divine and allow creative inspiration
Yeah.
and intuition to guide me, which does it's all the downloads, the ideas that are coming to me.
Yes, exactly. You're getting the
Yeah, so
collective.
I don't want to shut it off, but being able to make sense of it, or not, it's easy for me to get an idea and think, "Oh my god, this is brilliant," and I'm going to run with it. And cuz if I'm in that heightened emotional excited space, I could have planned an entire new business venture in an afternoon. And
Yep.
so I have to like allow it to kind of settle in, and then be like, all right, does this idea have some merit? Do you really want to do all the work that goes behind that idea? Like, are we really getting behind this idea? And so being able to kind of let it settle and make sense of it. But yeah, the ideas and it's constant, which
I love
which
that. I
is
think
fun.
that's a lot of wisdom.
It is it is a lot of wisdom that is not mine to claim.
Well, why I say wisdom specifically is you said, I get tons of inspiration, but then I sit with it to see which idea I actually want to follow through with.
Yes.
And oftentimes, what I see a lot of is gens, especially, want to like rush the process and then hit a plateau or burnout. And why I say wisdom is, especially as an emotional authority manifesting generator, like, you can go fast when you're in that neutral place. Like, that's your zone of genius. Like, when you're in that like middle zone of like everything's flowing and you're just like, yes, no, yes, no, yes, 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 this is what I want to do. You definitely can follow through and go fast and like you said, do a whole business in an afternoon.
Yep.
But I think where the wisdom comes is, again, knowing what's yours and knowing what you're excited about, satisfied towards, joyful about, like
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
listening to that full body yes, not the head idea of inspiration. And that's, I think, like the difference is like, really, when I like live it, is this the thing that I want to follow through with?
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. No, that's totally accurate. That's totally accurate. No, that is
Yeah.
super fun. And listen, I could talk about human design forever. I think it's fascinating. And
Oh, me too.
I think what I most appreciate about it is that it allowed me to make sense of the whispers I had always heard, and why I felt the connection to, well, so this idea of teaching. As a young
Mhm.
kid growing up, I thought you could be a teacher, a doctor, a mom. Like, there were very traditional, specific roles that I thought were all of the options that there were to be in the world, right? Because, that's how
Yeah.
we were conditioned. And so I grew up thinking, okay, I want to be a teacher. That sounds, but it was partially because I was being conditioned to think there were these specific roles. But then I realized later in life, no, it's because I have a deep desire to teach and to share. And that
Mhm.
is part of my
Mhm.
human design. And so being able to realize that there are avenues for me, and that I've done this in every single role that I've been in. Corporate America had an element of teaching and educating and mentoring and
Mhm.
guiding and leading. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Even in hindsight, I think what's interesting to me about human design is we're living it even when we don't realize that's what we're doing. And that's
Yep.
when, things fall into place or feel easier. And it doesn't quite make sense why that works for me and not other people, until you start looking at your human design and you're like, oh, I get it now. And then I think the magic is
Yeah.
when you can lean into it and actually use it to your advantage to kind of row the boat smoother and kind of faster in the direction you're
Yeah.
wanting to go.
Yeah, knowing it and living it are two very different things.
Yes.
And why I love human design is it actually provides practical somatic strategies of learning how to live it. Like, I love astrology and I love Myers-Briggs and I love all the personality
Yeah, yeah.
tests and all the things, but great. What do you do with this information? And human design, if you're working with someone, is really about deconditioning the influence of our parents and our loved ones because, like, for example, my mom is a splenic manifester. She makes decisions like the fastest out of all the types and gets things done super, super quickly. I'm a sacral generator, and I'm like, do I have to move as fast as you? Can I just go like step by step? Like, I'm not gonna move as quickly as you. And then next to my dad, who is an emotional authority generator, he's moving like a snail. And my mom's like running circles around us, going like, why can't you move as fast as me? And it's like that pressure
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you feel being conditioned by that. And then learning, oh, she's living in line with her design. I was actually living in mine, and my dad's living in his. And now there's nothing bad or wrong with any of that. That's just knowing who we are when we're in alignment and understanding and respecting each other's differences.
Exactly.
And also knowing how to speak forward, like when a need isn't being met or like when there is human design stuff coming up. So like for an emotional authority, I would always suggest like when you are in a funk and you just like wake up feeling in your wave and you go into the room with other people and you don't want them to fix you because that's going to trigger you even
Yeah,
worse,
yeah.
you just walk in the room and say, I'm feeling low today and it has nothing to do with you. So I'm just going to do me today and I don't need any of you to fix or change how I feel. And then everyone in the room will be like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
good. Not my problem. Not that they don't care, but it's like, it's a permission slip again for the non emotionals to like, okay, I don't have to hold on to her stuff.
Yes.
And for you as an emotional to be like, and I'm okay being not in the best of mood today. I'm still doing and showing up as best as I can.
Yes. Well, and I think that is where it took a little bit of learning on my part to allow the feelings. So, having
Mhm.
struggled with depression specifically in the past,
Mhm.
allowing myself to have a low moment without the fear of like slipping into major depression was
Yeah.
kind of tricky territory for a little while until I could just realize that I'm just allowing myself to say, okay, what is bubbling up? What are the thoughts I've been thinking? Is this situational? What I've learned just recently is that I am much more empathic than I had ever realized. And so now
Mm.
I'm recognizing, oh, it's not even mine. I just picked up on somebody else's.
Yeah.
And so really
Yeah.
just allowing it to be what it is has been instrumental for me because it lets it pass faster, to be honest. And because I am
Yeah.
one of these, let's move quick, I do run circles around all sorts of people without even knowing I'm doing it. If I'm feeling slowed down, that becomes a source of aggravation and frustration, which is
Yep.
my counterintuitive. And so
Yeah.
just allowing it to be what
Mhm.
it is
Mhm.
lets it pass faster. So then I can move on to the next thing and I'm happy.
Yeah. I think you pointed to something that a lot of emotional authority folks say is because I think about childhood. So you've always been an emotional authority, but imagine if you were raised by a parent who was a non emotional and they didn't know anything about human
Yeah.
design. So this non emotional parent is going to go, you're making me feel angry. It's your fault for making me feel angry. And the emotional authority 3-year-old's like, but I'm angry. Like, why is that bad? Am
Yeah.
I bad for being
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
angry? And slowly and slowly and slowly that shuts down, shuts off. Now, we can just take that to parents and children in general, and like the generation of parents that we had did not talk about feelings, period.
No.
So there's also that layer there where even if they were emotional, they were also stuffing
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
and
For
not
sure.
talking about it. So then you have this generation of adults that struggle with depression, which depression is just suppression of the emotion.
Yep.
They're kind of like trying to stuff it down and suppress all the feelings. And the secret sauce is, again, like the visual I always give my clients is like you're surfing the wave. So
Yes.
you can fight that wave if you want to, and you can go on the undercurrent and like really try to fight your wave, or you can jump on your surfboard and actually like go like, well, I'm feeling sad, so I'm just gonna cry,
Yep.
and you just ride that wave.
Exactly.
Doesn't need to mean anything. I'm not making it mean anything. It's just what it is right now. And you pointed to it. The moment you allowed yourself to feel, it went by faster.
Yes.
And that's where the ease comes in. And again, I think such a beautiful permission slip that human design gives of like, oh, there's nothing bad or wrong with me for having these emotions. And even though it feels scary and dark when I'm in it, it doesn't stay. Like there's an impermanence that we have to remember too
Yes. So valuable.
with emotion.
Yeah, this is why one of my favorite phrases is this too shall pass. Because for a long
Yeah.
time it just served me to remind me that wherever I was sitting was not going to last forever. Like even if it feels like I think back
Mhm.
to the early days of having my children, and when those sweet little babies are just as adorable, they're like puppies. They're so cute, and it's their saving grace because everything about them is so
Yeah.
hard. And I just remember those long late nights and thinking, okay, this isn't going to be forever. And it was where that phrase kind of got
Mhm.
me through. This too shall pass, because I wanted to, there's a lot of guilt and shame, and you need to savor the moment. So then you feel guilty that you're not savoring the fact that you're up at 3 a.m. because it's bullshit. and and
Yeah.
so just being able to say, okay, this isn't going to last forever. You're going to be okay. Really has been
Yeah.
instrumental, that phrase, to get me through many, many hard times in my life. But enough about me. Let's talk about you a little bit more. Um, so
Sure.
on this journey to being the business owner that you are today, in this holistic relationship coach, what has surprised you most about this journey of yours?
Oh gosh, what has surprised me most about this journey? Is it weird to say that nothing has surprised me because I'm so used to stuff being thrown at me that it's just honestly like, so I'm going to bring it back to human design for 1 second for those listeners who understand human design. I'm a 6-2. Um, and what that means is, as a profile in the sixth line, you go through 3 phases in life. So prior to 30, I was in my trial and error phase, which I will call my trauma phase.
Yes.
And all the really intense things happened pre 30. And then, which I'm on right now, I'm 40, and I went from the 30 to 50 phase, which is on the roof. So now I'm in this phase of observing all the things that happen and why they happened. It's a very strange feeling to have your life be very clear in phases because there's so many experiences that I've been through that I honestly sometimes even forget how intense they were because it feels like a different version of me.
Yes.
But I had so much thrown at me in my early life and in my 20s that it's almost like now that I'm in going through my 30s and 40s, and I switched my career I went back to school at 29.
Mm,
And so that's like a Saturn return, went through a divorce, went
yep.
back to
Yep.
school, like all the things all at once. So not much kind of throws me anymore. I have clients that I've heard horrific things, and honestly, it it's heartbreaking, but it doesn't surprise me
Yes.
because life just happens. But I think there's pleasant possibilities that happen, and I think what always kind of gives me hope is seeing those like glimmers and sparkles of people who've been through really tough times and realize that they can kind of come back through to the other side. Like
Oh, yes.
I've had clients that, you know, I used to do volunteer work in a low income part of where I grew up, and volunteering at a community center, and most horrific things that you wouldn't believe that I've heard as a therapist.
Oh, sure.
And seeing them get from rock bottom to like job, successful relationship, like completely change your life around, like I don't even know if those are surprises. Those are like intentional work and stepping stones, but it's a happy reflection. And I love seeing those maybe we should just call them like timeline jumps. Like it's like a skip and they're like, "Oh, yeah, no, I just made the shift and here I am." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Wow,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like look at you go. Look at you shine."
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why I started this podcast, was I wanted to highlight those stories because, and selfishly, how exciting is it for me to just get the opportunity to meet people who've done these amazing things?
Mhm.
But so much of that good shit that we're celebrating of what people are doing and accomplishing now. And they finally took the leap of faith and did the thing that's been calling to them their whole life, and it's working out, and they're happier than they've ever been. And it's fun to celebrate that, but it's also so much more satisfying to realize how far they've come and what adversity they went through, and
Mm-hmm.
how their obstacles, or what, life threw lemons at you, or whatever you want to say, it didn't define them, and it didn't keep them from doing anything. If anything, it catapulted them to where they were going. It was almost the
Yeah.
fuel to the fire. Anyways, I
Mm-hmm.
just love that I get the opportunity to highlight stories like that for other people, because I know the value in
Mm-hmm.
someone hearing a story that sounds like theirs and seeing what someone did with it, that is like the little seed that's planted. Or if the seed has already been planted for the listener, it's the watering of the seed. And
Yeah.
it's my ripple effect
Yeah.
to be able to share those
Yeah.
stories with people. And so I love that you're on the show and contributing to that. So my next question is, like, when you look back to the younger you in, the
Mm-hmm.
early stage, pick the age, it's up to you. What advice would you give her?
Mm. It's okay to ask for what you need.
Oh, yes.
You don't have to play small. It's okay if not everyone likes you, because you're not for everyone, and that's okay. But keep asking for what you need, and never, never, never stop asking. It's safe. And even when it feels like sometimes you're not getting your needs met immediately, remember that you're never actually alone.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so powerful. One of the reasons I like asking that question is because so much wisdom comes out of it, and they're so varied in the responses. They're all beautiful in their own way. But that one specifically, asking for what you need, and when you feel like it's not being heard or received or met with what you're actually needing, you're learning to voice to the universe what you need. And that's where the
Mm-hmm.
magic is. It doesn't matter if the human standing next to you is if it's landing for them or not. You voicing what you need is the important part. And
Mm-hmm.
I love that was
Yeah.
your advice. Very wise.
And also, I think I think back, so the reason that that's so loud for me is my younger sister had special needs. She was very handicapped and had like life threatening stuff. Um, and so when she was born, I sort of was like, well, my needs do not matter in contrast to her.
Right.
Like,
Right.
who am I to ask for these things?
Yeah.
And then I went through most of my 20s going like, needs? I don't have needs. I don't even know what these things are. Like, what I'm allowed to
Yes.
like ask for what I want. Like, I just wait for things to happen to me.
Yes.
I don't know what I want.
Yeah.
I had no hot clue. When I first did therapy through my divorce, I had didn't even know what self-care was. Like, I was like, what?
Yes.
What's this thing?
What's
Taking
this
care of
thing?
yourself. All I ever do is take care of myself. I don't want to take care of myself
Yeah.
more. Like, there was this
Yes.
weird inner child that was like sassy and coming out,
Uh-huh.
and she's like, okay, well, we need to give her a voice.
Yes.
And I think you said something so powerful there, because had I had known that even if the adult in my life didn't understand what my need was, I could still ask for it
Yes.
or help them understand it too.
Yes.
And that would help me communicate with God and the universe as an adult to really truly manifest my desires. And that's the
100%.
biggest journey that I've had to learn
Yes.
is like clarity on the request,
Yes.
and also faith that it's going to happen, because this is the other piece.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I just had this massive awareness actually happen, which is perfectly in alignment with this conversation. So I realized I usually actually did get most of my needs met as a child, but the story was there that I wasn't, because
Oh,
as a
the damn
child, when you don't
stories.
get it met immediately, yeah, I made it mean that I was not getting my needs
Yep.
met. Whereas it's just because a child doesn't understand the concept of time.
Uh-huh.
And so what felt like days, weeks, was probably realistically like an hour or 2 of like a mom going, "Can't you see I'm making
Yeah.
dinner? I will come play with you when I'm
Yeah.
done."
Yeah.
Right? Like, but a kid doesn't really get that. And so then I also was very triggered by feeling like I was always waiting for my manifestation to happen. And that felt very triggering now as an adult because I'm like, all my life, all I've been doing
Is
is waiting,
waiting for,
waiting,
yes.
waiting, waiting, waiting. Because again, I always got praise. Like I was the good little girl that
Yeah.
sat in the hospital waiting room while my sister was having an appointment,
Yeah.
or I was the good little girl that like was responsible and helped around the house and waited for her turn and very polite. And I was like, all my life I've been waiting.
Yes. Yes.
And then I realized, oh no, it's not waiting, it's receiving that was the
Yep.
block. And realizing what I already had
Yep.
and appreciating that it's there and noticing when the need was met. Because this is the thing, when the story is loud, you don't remember all the times
Yep.
that the need was met. And the irony is, because the need was met is why you don't remember
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
because our
Yeah.
brains love to hold on to the negative. They don't really keep the positive stories as strongly as the negative. So there's this imprint of like, I never get what I want, I'm always waiting, and I'm like, well, that's actually not a true statement at all, Rachelle.
Well,
Like,
and I think when we can like identify that thought, this belief, we're walking around just believing this story that we tell ourselves. I tell it, I had a course
mhm,
one time I created. It was called Change the Story because that's where the
mm,
value is. That's where the meat of changing your life is. When you change the story, you're telling yourself this bullshit thing you've been believing because of some story you made up as a child, most likely. When you can look at it and
yep.
be like, hold on a second, is that actually true? Is that like 100% all the time, always true? And you can look at it and usually shine a little light on it and be like, nope, not even remotely
Yeah,
close to being true, actually. What else is true instead? And so that's where changing the story changes your life.
mhm.
Yep.
Have you ever read Byron Katie?
No, on my list though.
She's got a book called Loving What Is.
Yes.
It was one of the first, like, self-help books that I read, and I couldn't finish it because I was so triggered by it because
Oh,
she asked the question, like, "Is it really
yes.
true?" And, like, without a doubt, and I was like, "Well, it feels like it is, so it
Yeah,
is."
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I
yeah.
was just, like, again, early in my self-development,
Yes.
like, the inner child was real loud at the time, and I was like, "Well, this is triggering for me, and I don't wanna believe what she's saying. It's so black and white, and
Yes.
it's, like, absolute." And I'm like, "Ah!" But at the same time, now, like what you said, like, where I am now in my life of rewriting that story, I'm like, maybe my perception as a
Yes.
child from the lens of, again, a not even fully developed logic center
Yes.
in the
Oh my
brain
gosh, yes.
couldn't actually see what was happening in that scenario. And then because most of us don't have an adult that's like narrating our lives for us every second of the day, we just started to like go, well, this plus this always equals this. And that's why the deconditioning process in human design is so important.
Yes.
That's why I do a lot of inner child work and reparenting work with my clients, because those like little tiny little things are the energetic resistance that stops us from kind of going to that next level. Because again, for me, if I was holding on to this belief, like all I'm doing is waiting, the universe and God's gonna be like, well, I'm gonna
Okay.
keep you
Guess you're
waiting
gonna
and you're
keep
never
waiting.
gonna get what you
Yep.
want because we're gonna just keep waiting.
Yeah.
Because this is what you keep telling yourself. I want more to wait. I wanna wait more. I wanna wait more. It's like, no, 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 no.
Yeah. No, that's so
Like,
good. That's so good. And when you were talking earlier about your early 20s, I was thinking back to how I didn't even realize until I was early 20s that you could order a hamburger and ask them not to put on certain things. Like, and it
yeah.
was such a it's such a small little thing, but it was so indicative of how I was living my life and not even
Mhm.
giving myself permission or recognizing that choice was an option. And it's probably why I talk so
Yeah.
much about choice now. Um, but just being able to say, oh, wait, do I actually like tomatoes? Do I want tomatoes on my burger? Like it wasn't until I was realizing, all these people. I'm like, what are you doing? Demanding this burger to be made this way.
Mhm.
It was so shocking to me that people would ask to such detail how for people should make their burgers. And I thought, this is ridiculous. Why don't you just get it the way it comes? Until I was like, wait a second, because you get to choose. What do you actually want? And that's one
Yeah.
of the first questions I ask people when we work together is, what do you want? Because a lot of people
Mhm.
don't even know yet. What do you want on your damn burger?
I love that though because again, when you're a child, you don't really have a choice.
Hmm.
Life is happening to and around you
Yeah,
because you don't have the capacity to be that person always making the choice. It doesn't mean you're not given
yeah,
options, but like a child doesn't have the choice. Like if a sibling needs to get to like I didn't have a choice. If my sister
yep,
needed to go to the hospital, like I was getting in the car and going to the hospital. Like and so many times in our life as children, we're not given options or choices, and
for
that's
sure.
why that's so important to realize the power of your decisions now as an adult and, like,
Yep,
taking responsibility for your choices. Because the reason why it's so, like, triggering for us in today's day and age is I think a lot of people hold back on wanting to make a decision because they're scared they're making the wrong one or they can't change their mind if they make
yes,
a choice, right? Like,
100%.
you might not like tomatoes for your 20s, and all of a sudden in your 30s, you're like, Can I have extra tomatoes?"
Yes,
Like, there's nothing bad or wrong that you changed your mind or
yeah,
you learned something and decided you think differently now. But again, society doesn't praise that. They go, "Well, you decided this, so this is the way it is." And it's
yep,
like, that's not growth minded. That's not growth oriented. There's no room for possibility in there of like learning.
yeah. Oh, I think I say on every episode, you get to change your mind. Like, I just always,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
always comes into the conversation because I think, yeah, oftentimes we are faced with a choice and we think, first of all, that there might be a wrong choice. And I always
Mhm.
like to challenge most thoughts. But when you look back at the choices you've made in your life, you could have made either choice and it would have likely worked out. Like, it, in my mind,
Yep.
the universe is always guiding us. And it's like the choose your own adventure. This is our life.
Yeah.
You pick A or B, and then, okay, well, the story goes from there. And we're still being guided to the place that our soul wants us to go. It doesn't matter if you chose
Exactly.
right or left to begin with, like, you can't get it wrong. And so
Yep.
I like to always remind people that you also get to change your mind. So take the job, decide
Yep.
later if you want to keep it or
Yep.
not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Love that. There is no such thing as a wrong choice.
There isn't. No, you can't get it wrong. One of the people I follow,
Yeah.
Amanda Francis, she curses like a sailor and likely is the reason I was
Mhm.
initially attracted to her. But her work is amazing. It's all around money mindset. But she always
Mhm.
says, you can't fuck it up. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh God, like talk about permission for
How
people.
freeing is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So liberating
So
to be like,
liberating.
I can just make decisions and nothing will go wrong
Yeah. It's always
because
working
it's
out
always coming back.
in your favor for you. Doesn't
Yep.
always feel like in the
Yep.
moment. That's why we have to tell ourselves this
No.
too shall pass, but it's always
Yep.
working out. No. Oh my gosh. I have loved this conversation. It has been so fun. I feel like we took a meandering journey through my typical questions, but my last one for you is how can people find you?
Well, most of my time is spent on Instagram. So, my handle is I'll spell my name because most people misspell it. So
Yes.
Rachele and then double underscore K. I spend a lot of time there, and that's usually where I promote things too. You can find me through my website as well. And I do kind of meander into TikTok and sometimes Facebook and sometimes YouTube. But right now, most of my energy
Yeah. Yeah.
is on Instagram. I love engaging with people there. So I'd love for people to shoot me a DM and connect with me there.
I do love the gram myself. I have not played very much in TikTok. I'm trying to use the word play intentionally more this year, but the TikTok, as I call it, it's just,
Yes.
it's been more of a black hole for me to get sucked into
Hmm.
whatever algorithm that it's taking me down. So I
It's a
haven't played very
slippery
much there,
slope.
but
Yeah.
I do love the gram. So I will be sure to connect all of my listeners to you in the show notes. They can go find all of your contact information, but Thank you again for joining me today. This was such a fun conversation.
I agree. I thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you. And yeah, to any listener that want to ask me any questions or anything further, again, find me on Instagram because I love just connecting and building community and getting to know people genuinely and authentically. It's very important for me that people don't ever feel alone in their story. And so I hope that there was
Yes,
a piece of camaraderie that was felt in my share today. And yeah, thank you again, Shauna, for having me.
absolutely. Yes, thank you. Hey, hey, my friend. Thank you for listening today and for leaving a review. Those reviews mean so much to me and they help this podcast grow. I just love reading them. So if you haven't left one yet, please do. Now listen, are you having your own start again moment? If your next chapter is filled with uncertainty, my new Start Again guide will get you pointed in the right direction. You can download your free guide today at shaunalee.com/startagain.